All right, guys, want to welcome everybody in tonight. See if I can get on the camera here. All right. All right, y'all let me know if you can hear me tonight. If you're coming in. I know this is a new channel for us here, so still trying to get everybody used to coming in on this page. So, but we'll work it through. All right, once again, want to welcome everybody into Relational Real Talk tonight. I hope everybody has had a great evening and had a great day, rather. It's been a long day, y'all. Yeah. There you go, Carrie. Okay. All right. You can't hear. Can you hear the music as well, Carrie? I can't tell if the music is playing or not. Okay. Let me know if you guys can hear the music or not. Okay, good deal. Is it playing clear, Carrie? Okay. All right. Share your referral link. Okay. All right. Once again, I want to welcome everybody in. I know this is a new, uh, and it may take everybody a moment to kind of get, used to coming over here. I want to try to make sure to get a private. It's not clear. Oh, oh, fooey. Oh, I hate that. Sometimes it's the laptop as well. I don't think, yeah. All right. It's skipping a little bit. Yeah. I have to make sure to use the other laptop when I'm coming on. But I want to welcome everybody in on tonight. And I'm going to turn it down just a little bit because I don't want it doing all that skipping and going on. But once again, I want to welcome everybody in tonight to our Relational Real Talk. Y'all, we have shifted over to our new time on Thursday nights, and hopefully everybody will be able to come on in and join us. Otherwise, I'll keep sharing the replay so that the message can get across. Because I think the conversations that we have in this relational real talk room is really relevant and much needed, especially in the world that we're in right now. Just at any time, there's always been um, a lot of conversation around the singles out there not always being fed the things that they need or whatever. That's why I've always taken kind of an interest in the singles ministry, so that somebody can kind of feel the heartbeat of the things that they go through, and then it can also share with them from experiences that there's life in singleness. It really is. There's a lot of life in it, while you're even pursuing a lot of your dreams, and whether you are eventually one day aspiring to be in a relationship, there's life before you get to it. And I think it's very necessary that you do the work, and what they say, get your badge, and get your degree a little bit, so that you can be prepared for whatever that next level is. So, well, I want to welcome everybody in. My name is Marilyn Bailey Pettigrew, and I am your host for Relational Real Talk. We're here on Thursday nights now at 7:15 in the evening. And you may want to share it with others, and letting them know that there's a special class that's been set aside for them. And we're going to be dealing with singles let's talk tonight. Again, it's going to be singles let's talk, because I do want to have more conversation. Over the last couple of weeks, we've really dove into some conversation pieces to where we dealt with dealing with that season of preparedness, making sure you get prepared for whatever it is that you want to do. That's your emotional preparedness. That's your relationship readiness. All of that, making sure that emotionally you are in a space to where you feel good about who you are, and you feel confident that when you get ready to step out, into territories of dating or different things like that, that you don't go out there kind of half cocked or whatever. Because y'all, the enemy lurks even in those places, especially when you are very naive, or not really knowing what's taking place. Hey there, Mrs. Celia, it's good to see you tonight. Especially when you don't know how to kind of conduct yourself in those areas out there. Y'all, I was watching that show. I think is dating after 50. It later daters. That's what it's called, later dater. And one of the things that I noticed with them, the later, the longer it takes for you to really get out there and begin to start meeting people. Sometimes you're a little green behind the ears, and you're a little wet behind the ears, or you really don't know what to do. And sometimes you'll get out and start over talking or whatever. And I said, man, it would have been nice if they would have had maybe a real coach, somebody that really lived a single life and kind of went through those stages where when they first got started, what are some of the hiccups? Those of you that may be dating online, I think you really need a coach when it comes down to dating online out there, so that you can, know the do's and don'ts and different things like that. And maybe one day we will talk about that. But tonight I wanted to talk about a conversation piece that I think is very prevalent right now. And it's dealing with loneliness and isolation. Because I think some people think that they are lonely right now, and they could be lonely, but I think it's the way you define it. Because sometimes when you're lonely, you'll start, getting out there and getting involved in things just to kind of occupy that space that you're in. Because you know how it is. Sometimes we don't like dead space or dead air. We don't like it when something's not moving around. Y'all, I'm that girl that grew up, outside, and always moving around in the woods, and always something going on. And I think I took that into my adult years, also, because I don't like too much being still. And so what I do is I'm constantly finding something to do always. But I think that's just a part of my personality or whatever. And what I've had to do was slow down, so that I can pay attention to the signs. What is it that you like? What do you want? All of that. And sometimes I'll do that so that I'm not always feel that old empty space that's there. Even since I've been single, I have been doing that same thing. I make sure, that I fill my time up with things that's going to be, very meaningful, instead of just, always subscribing to trying to get somewhere where I think a man is going to be at. I don't have time for that. I want to make sure to work on myself, not go into places hungry, because I have seen people actually do that. They will go into social settings and not really knowing how to conduct themselves or how to handle themselves. And they will mess around and think that, because some people tell you got to be a little flirty or things like that. But what happens when you start flirting and then you start flirting with a married man and you don't know he's married? Because you're not, sometimes we're not always being intentional about what we do. And you can mess around and, get with a married man out there. And there are some men that will tell you, no, sis, hey, I'm taken. But there are some out there, they look for individuals that may have that old lonely smell on them or whatever. So I want to talk about that tonight and to kind of give you a feel or a sensor of, what that may look like, so that you can definitely be on the lookout for things that you're doing even yourself, with things to make sure you're not putting yourself into harm's way. So let's kind of start off with this. Once again, I want to welcome everybody that's coming in tonight. If y'all would just say hello as you're coming in so that I can know who you are, that would be great. But we start off and talk about this loneliness and isolation. um, I think they are deeply felt experiences. They are very connected to one another, especially as singles are navigating life independently, by yourself and different things like that. And they can stem from a lot of things. Both loneliness and isolation could really stem from a lot of societal expectations. It could be personal circumstances. Hey, Miss Kathy. It could be personal circumstances or just simply quiet moments that feel a bit too quiet. Sometimes people don't like all that. That's why a lot of times people stay scrolling on social media. They, out there on TikToks and Facebooks and different things like that. Hey, Mrs. Dion, or they may be even out there, socializing a lot. And then there are some people that decide that, what, I feel safer in my home. I don't want to do anything, especially if you've gotten yourself kind of just coming out of some things that were not so advantageous for you. But I think it's very important that you understand the difference between you being lonely and being just isolated, because they're two different things. So singleness, they really are very close to one another, but it's a little bit of different. Let's talk about loneliness first of all, because I talk to a lot of people in my coaching programs to where they have this description of what's going on with them. Like, I'm frustrated, I'm agitated, it seems like nothing is going right, I'm always at the house by myself, my children don't seem to care. Here it is, Mother's Day is coming up. You're expecting for the kids to do things. You would think that the children would do things for you, but instead the children are not coming around. Hey, Mrs. Juanita, the children are not coming around, different things like that. And it makes you feel some kind of way. You know what I mean? And sometimes you can't always put your finger on that. And this is how, when you get into this loneliness, because loneliness can be what we call an emotional state that you're in. It kind of stirs up various emotions, within you, like, am I good enough? Or, why is it nobody wants to be around me? That's that old emotional thing that tries to grip you, and then a feeling of being disconnected from people too. You can be married and be in this place right here dealing with loneliness, because, like, say for instance, if you and your spouse are kind of, just going through a season of just not gelling together, y'all just not understanding each other, but you guys have decided to hang in there with each other, because marriages are they're built like that. You have to learn how to go through or navigate through different seasons, because sometimes we don't always have the words for different things. But I believe that it is a place where you can sometimes feel disconnected, And you can even feel a lack of meaningful companionship. Your husband want to stay at home, your wife want to stay at home all the time, and you want to get out the kids and finally gotten grown. We can get out of the house now, and nobody wants to do anything. We're disconnected, or we want to do different things, and you're feeling very disconnected. And that could come from a lot of different reasons. It could have come from years and years of toiling with one another too. I can only imagine those that have been married for long periods of time, how you have to go back in and recommit yourself to your vows almost every day, because I really believe that a lot of times that we are like little children when we go into relationships. We're still healing that inner child that's there. Both parties, male and female, are doing that. And sometimes when you think that a person does not get you, there can still be a feeling of loneliness there, a feeling of disconnect that's there. And how do you tell your mate or your spouse when y'all are not communicating effectively that I feel alone? I feel alone raising the children. I feel alone. I have to go out there and, when I come home in the evening time, I don't have anybody here to help me get these groceries out the car, or, light bulb and went out in the house or whatever. It's a whole lot of things that could take you into a place of where you feel lonely, and you could feel lonely and have a whole lot of people around you. Anytime that you're feeling that there is an emotional disconnect somewhere, you can go into a state of loneliness. It's often internal and can stem from unmet emotional needs. I think that's very important to know. Another thing, societal pressures. You could be watching everybody else on the outside, doing certain things, and it kind of make you feel some kind of way. And then, like I said, it could also come from, maybe personal struggles that you have going on. Maybe, like when a woman goes through menopause, or even when a gentleman goes through, because men can go through those stages as well. They don't always feel love. Your body is going through changes. Men go through certain change, like losing their hair, balding. Maybe they were in shape at one time and now they're not feeling good about themselves. Y'all, I remember talking to Mr. Joe a while back, and Mr. Joe has been an avid gym rat. That's what I call him. He's a gym rat. He was in there all of the time. And then there came a season to where Mr. Joe was no longer being in the gym. And I asked him, how did that feel? And he said, Marilyn, it's a little different. He said, I don't go all the time. I don't not go all together. I just pick and choose the times that I go and what he's had to do. And I thank God for it. Joe has created another sense of meaning. I think the men's locker room came in just in time for him, so that he could pour his energies into something else, since he can't go to the gym, because it may be times where he may be a little bit more fragile than what he was before. And you just don't want to take those chances like that. So sometimes you can have your own personal struggles. Women, listen, we go through that phase, we start gaining weight. Sometimes you can feel lonely because you don't want to get out of the house or anything, or you don't feel like you're connecting to your friends like you used to. And it could be because y'all just have not, done life with each other in a while, and we're trying to figure out where everybody's at now. What are we doing? Ladies, I would say to you, or gentlemen, if any men come on here, it's very important that even when you start sensing that feeling of loneliness that's there, do yourself a favor and just start doing small little incremental things, like getting out of the house and maybe going to the library, or you may go to Starbucks, anything that'll get you around people, because that loneliness comes in when you're not feeling like you're connected to the people that you need. And maybe there's a different a set of people that God is getting ready to introduce you to. Loneliness can come through seasonal changes taking place in your life as well. So one of the things I would say, just get out and begin to start mingling around with others. And then don't be afraid to be vulnerable in those times like that. It's like, I want to get out and do something different, but I'm still learning who I am outside of my children. I'm learning who I am. Think about it. If you got a spouse that passed away, I'm still learning who I am outside of my spouse. If you have a parent that has passed away, you're still learning who you are outside of that. And sometimes those things can make you feel lonely when really it's just an emotional state that you're in. A person can feel lonely even in a crowded room. You really can when you don't feel like you're have things in common or you know, y'all, I do this sometimes. Sometimes I can be in a crowded room and I can feel a sense of loneliness that may be there is because I'm looking for connection. I'm looking for something to connect to. And there are times where I've had to learn how to wait. You know, when I remember when I joined one of the churches back in my hometown, and I was the only one. I didn't really know too many people there, and I had to get in there and fight that fear of loneliness. You know, I'm not going to have anybody to talk to. You know, this big old church, and I don't know anybody that's there. And one of the things that I did, I just kept showing up every chance I got. When they had something that I found myself interested in, I would just show up. And eventually you're going to end up meeting someone. The new church that I'm at right now, I knew that I was the only one. I didn't know anybody else over there. But y'all, it ain't been too many times I've gone anywhere, even in a different state, that I don't run into somebody I know. I don't know how in the world that happens. But when I went over to the new church, and I know loneliness is something that you may deal with. It's just a emotional state. And if you can just remember, one of the reasons that I started getting out like that is so that I could meet new people. But it's not going to be just automatic that, you know, everything's going to change just like that. But what I did was I got to we had our women's share event at the church, and I wanted to go. I wanted to go and be a part and support the women's ministry, see what it was all about. And when I got there, y'all, I just picked a table to go sit at. I found a table that where there was maybe 2 or 3 seats that were empty. And I asked somebody, did they mind me? Was anybody sitting there? Do you guys mind me sitting there? And when I went and took a seat, I ended up meeting one of the ladies that actually joined our Dallas chapter. You know, she had been a part of the church for a while, but she and her husband had moved to they had moved to Fort Worth, so they don't come as often. And only time she come was doing share. And so y'all, we end up connecting with each other. We made an instant connection, me, her, and her girls. And so we have been, she's been the only person that I've known in the church. So we've gotten to know each other outside of the church as well. I invited her to come over to some of the events that we have. And so sometimes that you can feel those lonely spaces just by, you know, stepping out and doing something that you've never, you know, ever done before, because you can feel lonely in a crowded room. Dion, you said me too. Yeah. Another thing is loneliness, it's subjective. You know, some people may feel lonely despite having relationship. You can still feel lonely and have relationship with people. You can have a big old family and feel lonely. You really can. Your life has, you know, gone in a different direction, and you have to really, you know, don't go overboard with that and start taking it out on people and feeling like other people are not wanting to be around you or anything like that, because it's normally not like that. Sometimes it's just a different season that you may be going through, you know, so you want to stop and identify your prayers. Maybe you did ask God to bring you into the company of new people. And remember, the scripture said you can't pour new wine into old skins. You have to make up your mind whether you want to be there or here. And sometimes we vacillate. Sometimes the loneliness can get too loud. And we left a place knowing that we needed to, for our own sanity and serenity. But the noise got too loud being by yourself. And guess what people did? They went back. They went back to unhealthy environments. So it's very subjective. You can be lonely just even when you got relationships that are around you. The next thing, it often involves a longing for deeper connections or belong. That's really what I believe a lot of loneliness is. You long for deeper connections or a sense of belonging. Where is your tribe at? Where do I fit? And I'm saying all these things because many of you may be experiencing some of these things, and you know how it is. Sometimes vitality, it could be we start thinking, but Lord, am I gonna die? And am I gonna die alone? All that kind of stuff. It's just sometimes you just want deeper connections with people. You tired of shallow conversations. And you want people that really, have meaning and direction for where they're going. And I really believe when you start going through those things, those are things that you have to start asking God for. And even think about this. You may be going through season of isolation when God is preparing you for another direction, for another state, a season of life. If you even, search the scriptures, there were often times when, the Lord calls separation to take place, with individuals, whether it was, it could have been David. David was in a season of isolation, and what he was able to do, he was able to focus and hone in on the strengths and the gifts and talents that he had without feeling like he had to be around other people. There was even a season where Job went through a season of isolation. It was like, he talked about sitting in sackcloth and ashes like he did. That's a quiet season when you trying to figure out what just happened. I woke up one day and then all of a sudden my cattle were gone, my children were gone, and you don't necessarily want to be around people during those times. You trying to really get your mind together, and anything that comes in with a lot of noises, it becomes a little too much. It becomes too loud for you. And then there could also be seasons where Abraham, I think about him a lot, to where the Lord actually told Abram to get thee from among thy kindred. So I think that loneliness, when you're going through those times of loneliness, it's going to take you through an emotional, maybe kind of journey with it. But when you start seeking purpose and everything that's happening with you, you and your friend, y'all not friends like you used to be. Even your cousins, y'all not as close as y'all used to be. And some of it is because we're all going on different paths in life. The other thing we talk about is isolation. That's a different thing when you're going through isolation. That has a lot more to do with physical and social separation. It's a state of being removed from interactions or opportunities for connection. You're making choices to isolate yourself. Depression can take you into isolation. you know um just too many situations going on in life can cause you to be isolated. Sometimes you just want to be off to yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that until you want to do that too much, because a lack of fellowship and communion with people, it starts to water down your empathy. It waters down your feel for people. It waters down your discernment. You need people around you so that you can continue to keep growing. While isolation can lead to loneliness, some people may choose to be isolated, like I said, for solidarity, for reflection and peace. I think those are positive things. Like, say for instance, somebody coming into the coaching programs that I have. You're coming in for a spiritual, a new journey, spiritually. I think times like that, it's good for you to isolate yourself, or you go through times of reflection when you've had something going on in your marriage and you need some times of reflection to see what's really, really taking place. I think it's okay to do it. I don't think it's best for you to jump into a new relationship or anything like that because you're lonely. Like, remember, that's an emotional state. But I think that the isolation is necessary when you are learning new things about yourself. One, what just happened? What were some things that could have been done differently without getting sunk in, but ask the question, what other things could have been done, to keep this from these things, these balls dropped, because I don't want to go through that all of it, because the isolation doesn't really feel good, because sometimes you can get into a place of reflection and the enemy will take you backwards. And he'll start taking you into your past, and he'll start bringing up all kinds of things. Y'all, one of the reasons that I decided that it was time for me to start mingling a little bit more in the city, just getting out, getting to know people, because I felt this thing isolating myself too much. Now I come on live with the groups and we do all of the coaching and all of that, but it's a difference once I leave the room and I start doing real life. I started noticing that I wasn't really connecting to a whole lot of people at all, I had gone through those seasons of reflections and peace. I enjoyed the peace, but I also longed for people too. So the first place that I started at was the church. I wanted to get connected to the church. I didn't necessarily want to go out to clubs, or because I don't do that anyway. I wasn't necessarily trying to hang out with a bunch of friends, and that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to take it slowly. I wanted to make sure that God is at the front of it all, to identify what it is that I need right now. Sometimes, I'm gonna be honest with you, there were times when I was satisfied with just being with my daughter and the grandkids. That was satisfying to me. Whereas in one season, it was almost like I had to have, people around me until it became too much you know. But I take little opportunity. And then another thing that I did was, I know that I'm a connector of people. So I started the Dallas chapter here in the Dallas area. I knew that I couldn't get back to, Tyler like I was before, to, be with the groups and have girl talk and all of that. So my thing was, let's be sensible with this. You're not going to be on the highway all the time. So I started creating an environment here. And the first thing I wanted to do is build fellowship. Before we're all trying to come out of this thing of isolation. We're all trying to find this new space for ourselves, but I want to create a safe environment for people as well, for them to be able to connect to right spirits, different things like that. So another thing you could think about with isolation, especially with it being voluntary or situational, sometimes when you move to a new city, or you move to a new place, a workplace, or whatever, you start working remotely, you can go through that feeling of isolation. And you will determine whether you like that or not, you know and I think sometimes you have to build community. Like one of the ladies within on my job, you know, it can get long. They work in the office. I work from home. The ones that are in Kentucky, and because that's the main office, and they go in the office, y'all. I know it has to be sometimes dead air that's there. And so the most mingling that they do is when we do little meetings online or whatever. And there was one lady that she reached out to me, and we started a book club with each other, just so we can have somebody that we don't feel alone with. Because even when you start on new jobs, you can have a feeling of isolation because you have not connected to anyone. Now, you don't have to connect like everybody else does. I'm not one that, oh, I got to be at all the parties. I got to go to all the social gatherings. I got to go on, everything online. I'm not like that. I want to connect with purpose and with meaning. And this lady, we found something that we had in common with one another. First of all, our love for God, ministry, and then we had life experiences that we're still walking through. And we decided that we wanted to get around a positive atmosphere to do that. The next thing is make sure you show up, when you're coming out of those. And you sometimes you got to push yourself or make yourself, come out of those, seasons. Well, it was better that I don't feel like getting out tonight. No, remember your purpose for what you're doing, and it'll make you get out more. One of the things that I tell the ladies, even coming into the Dallas chapter, that it's important to make it a priority to get out of the house, just to do some things, just to mingle with people, because you never know how this may be the very thing that will be the breakthrough for you. It could be the breakthrough from whatever situation you were going through in your marriage at home. It could be a conversation that's going forward with children. We had Mrs. D. Mrs. D came in. It was about not this last time we had it, but the time before. And D shared a testimony about her son. It was just so rare that type of conversation would have been made. but Dee made a connection with everybody. I don't even think she was trying to do that. She was just really expressing this time and season that she's in with raising her children. But everybody was able to connect to. They were able to connect to. Evidently she's gone through a season where she's learned how to taper her conversations with the kids, to make the children feel wanted and loved, whatever. So her season of isolation could have been that she wanted to make some meaningful connections in her life, maybe to get closer to your kids or maybe get closer to your grandkids. It could be a lot of different reasons. It can be caused by external factors like social exclusion. Some people exclude you from various things because you don't fit in, and they feel like you don't fit in or whatever, and you got to be okay with that. I would not internalize that. I would not choke on that bone with that, because just like it's people that will reject you or whatever, there's a lot of people that will accept you as well. And you literally have to go in there and tell yourself that we're having to do something different. Dion said, yes, I had to start pushing myself to get out and connect with other people. That's it, other than my family. Y'all put your comments on there if you want to share anything. Yeah, outside of family, because sometimes family can be the problem, you know, and you don't want to, I was talking about this morning about how sometimes you don't feel, you're not walking in confidence or encouraged because we sit around problems all the time. Little Bubba always got something going on, and that's the only conversation we have is what he did today, and different things. Like, you want to have more stimulating conversations with people, otherwise you start dying out, you start losing your feel or feel of empathy or apathy for people, different things. So you want to definitely get out and mingle as often as you can. Some people experience isolation without feeling lonely if they find fulfillment in what they're doing. That's more. I know that I love people. I'm a people lover, and so I already know if you ever want to find something that satisfies your soul, connect people together. And through the connecting of other people together, you end up connecting with the people that you want to connect with. Y'all, I could leave our meetings and I've talked to everybody that's there. But once I've connected people the way that God has shown me to connect them, I can dismiss everybody just the same. And then I may carry on one person from the whole group that just kind of touch my heart, and I'll start building meaningful connection. Y'all, this is what I look for. I look for things that stick, because some people will make a connection with you, but it don't stick. And I think in order for it to stick, there has to be follow through. I've always been that one that I'll reach out to people, check, see how they're doing, and I'll just do it over and over again until I start realizing that's not a good connection. They're not connected. Maybe that's not what they wanted. Maybe that's what I wanted. Maybe that's what I needed. And I've had to learn how to let go quickly so that you can make room for the people that do want to come in. And I think it's, when you're looking for a sense of fulfillment, look for people that's looking for you too. Let's go back to singles. Let's talk. When you're out there and you're going through one of these stages of loneliness, isolation, whatever, don't get that mixed up with your pursuit of a mate. Remember, one of them is a state of being, and another of them is a physical thing that you're going through. The loneliness is just a state of being, and it could be temporary, it could be by choice, it could be a lot of different things. But isolation, you separated for a reason, hopefully. You hope that you did, and hope that you're learning some things, so that if on that either one of those spectrums that I was desiring a mate, in the middle of, I need to make sure to do my homework while that means I can't be walking around with my head hanging down or talking woe is me, different things like that. You use that time to build yourself up and get yourself prepared, because you got to be prepared for the mate that God brings you. I don't think it's a whole lot of people that's going to satisfy your taste And but you need to ask God to prepare you for the mate that God has for you. At least I know that's what I'm doing. It's like, Lord, I got a lot of things that's going on. They're positive things for me, but there are some things that can set me back if I'm not careful. I want someone that can come in that helps me to move progressively. There are areas that I'm working on that may be areas of weakness. I hope that they have a strength in that area. So I'm not just connecting up with people because I feel lonely or I want to get rid of the isolation. I want to connect with people because purpose is there. I still need to have my values that are there. I need to be able to speak up. I need to ask the right questions. I'm not going to overlook a question because I'm thinking that if I say something, it's going to cause them to leave and I'm gonna be lonely again. No, I shouldn't have connected to them from the beginning out of loneliness. Loneliness is just a state that I'm in. It's just an emotional place that I'm in. Could be for various reasons. I'm not gonna get that. I'm not gonna get that crossed up with me desiring a mate. I still need to have my values set. What it is that I desire, what it is that I want. And when there are different things that you see that are coming up in the relationship, that's not what you asked for. You need to be able to open up your mouth and not start thinking about, well, dog, I just came out that season lonely. I don't want to go back there. And believe it or not, that's why a lot of singles are connecting up together because they feel lonely and they feel isolated. And you got to know the difference between those two because you can end up finding somebody in a temporary season that you're in and making a permanent decision upon them. You could have just been going through a season that you're growing. It's just a growing season for you, and then you mess around and hook up with somebody. And what happens when you feel healthy again, and then that other person is not growing? It's not connecting for purpose or anything. There are some things. You can distinguish between whether you're lonely or isolated, by addressing some of these things like for instance doing self-reflections. If you're dealing with loneliness, okay, that's an emotional thing. If you're dealing with that, do some self-reflections and some emotional check-ins, like asking yourself the question, do you feel emotionally disconnected even when you're surrounded by people? What do you feel that if you do, that's a state of loneliness. You're emotionally disconnected even when you are surrounded by other people. I would go in and ask the reason what that is for. Yeah, don't let loneliness make you vulnerable. That happens a lot, Maria. A lot of times when people feel, I just feel like it's time for me to, meet somebody or whatever. And then you start, all of your reasons and sensors go out the window. You can see things that they're doing and you won't check it. You won't call it out, or anything. I'm not saying, be chasing devils upon the rock, but you need to know what you stand for. What other people doing and what you do may not have anything to do with each other. And if the Bible says, can two walk together except they agree? And if we're not in this state of agreement, you're going, me, I would not be wanting to date somebody when they have at my age and they got a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old. I'm just not. I could really really like the person, but I can't see going backwards into a state like that because it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of attention. Now I'm not saying, like, for instance, if I end up getting with someone and something happened to one of our children and we ended up having to raise the grandchildren, or something like that. That's a different situation to me than taking on, just saying, oh, I already know they got kids, and that may not be anything that I want to do or anything, or it may even be, listen, you can't make no permanent decision on things when, people are. I'm at a season in my life. I'm not looking for nobody getting ready. I want somebody that's ready. Okay. They can't be making statements like we'll see. No, no, I want to know that you're ready. I want you to be moving in the direction like that, what it is that you want. So check for that. Do you feel emotional disconnect? When you get with somebody that's not ready, you're gonna feel emotionally disconnected because one of y'all want to go one direction and another one goes want to go in another direction. This is another thing when you do self-reflection, emotional checks. Do you lack opportunities to engage socially? That could be isolation. When you lack opportunity, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. That could be a state of isolation. That means you're not connecting to enough people out there. And y'all, this even in the dating world where you can feel isolated when you don't know where the pool of people are. How you gonna meet someone? I was talking to Maria this weekend, and when I love to ask people about their marriages or whatever, and I was asking her where she met her husband at, and she said she met her husband at a wake. They both were attending a wake, in a place that was familiar with both of them. And like, you don't know where you're going to meet anybody at. That's not lacking opportunity. You got to get out of the house and, maybe go to the grocery store instead of ordering all your stuff online with Amazon or having them deliver your food. Maybe get up and go to the store. And another thing you want to do, you want to make yourself presentable too. When you go places, you don't want to go in there looking like you're not in the market for relationship. I'm not saying be provocative or anything like that, but don't have your bonnet on, don't have your house shoes on, different things like that. Because there you are praying and asking God to bring somebody into your life, but you're not making yourself presentable for that. You want to make sure that you keep yourself in a state to where you become attractive, to where people would want to be around you. Don't even have to be a relationship with a man. It could be just in friendship because people looking for energy. They want you to have the right energy to be upon you. If you got that energy of isolation, you could take it or leave. You ain't used to really being around nobody. Well, I'll just go sit over here in the corner. Guess what's going to happen? You're probably not going to attract too many other people unless they isolated too. And you want someone that can help you to kind of grow out of that season. Another thing is, are you longing for deeper relationships? And if you are, that could be loneliness. You are longing for deeper relationships, and like maybe you've given your life to the Lord, and all the people you knew before now were very carnal and worldly people. That happens more often than not. I remember when I gave my life to the Lord, I had to go through that season right there, and I don't think I felt disconnect because I had the church for one. I made myself connect to the church, but when I had to walk away or leave relationships that were not healthy or beneficial for where I was going, y'all, I did it proudly. I wasn't going to the club with you, so don't ask me to go to the club. I'm not. I stopped doing the house parties that I used to have. That's all. That's probably one of them. I wish I would have kept. Just kept the right people around or whatever. And but I was on a new journey. I needed to know who I was. I was trying to fight for the kids at that time and make sure that they have an opportunity for a great future. I had to put myself in a position to where career wise that I'm not out there just kind of lollygagging around in life. I want to have purpose and meaning for what I'm doing. So it was a season of loneliness for a while, but I would find myself getting so connected to the church. I got connected to the mothers and the elders. Then I had to come home and deal with it again because I was still longing for that connection. One of the things that we do when you can tell that you lonely and you longing for connection is first thing you do, you get on that phone, start calling your friends. Girl, and y'all ain't talking about nothing. Girl, what you doing? Whatever. I've got one girlfriend, she calls me like that, and it'll always start off with, girl, how you doing, this and that, and then it'll always drop down. And I said, she's dealing with loneliness. She's dealing with the emotional side to that. And it's normally because somebody has made her feel rejected. She doesn't have people around her. And we both live in two different cities now, and so oftentimes what I'll do is I will make the connection to say, hey, come on down, let's get together, let's do some things. Or I will say, hey, we got this event going on at our church, and you ought to come on down. Y'all, today it was so funny. We were talking about health things today, and I said, because I was feeling it myself. I said, girl, have you ever went and had a colon cleanse? A colon cleanse? And she said, mm-hmm. And I hated it. And I told her, I said, well, I'm thinking about going to get one, because I'm trying to start this new, health journey and, trying to just clean my insides out and, just doing something different. And she said, it hurts if I said, girl, we probably need to go fill ourselves up with a bunch of water and get out, start walking and doing some other things. But I still want to do that. That wasn't something that she wanted to do, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to do anything. On the flip side, another young lady, mind you, I'm just now getting out and getting away from that feeling of loneliness. And I've made connection with other people. And so somebody sent me something the other day and asked me, did I want to go to a fish fry? And I have not done those kinds of things with people in a long time, y'all. But I finally told her today, I said, yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and go. And she said, you're going to have so much fun. And Marilyn, sometimes we spend the night or whatever. I said, all right, I'm going to bring my clothes with me and I'm going to enjoy. I enjoy the ladies for one. I'm always going to check out the company that I'm around. And so I told her, I said, definitely I will go. Another one you'll think about when you're dealing with reflections and emotional check-ins, do you choose solitude but feel content? If you choose to be by yourself and you're okay with that, that's intentional isolation. I don't think anything is wrong with that. Maybe you like going to get you a book and, maybe you like to just go, maybe to Starbucks and go get you something, or coffee or whatever, and go on about your business. There are some people that are very introverted like that, and they love that lifestyle. So on one hand, there's nothing wrong with having that space of loneliness because it's just an emotional state. But if you are lonely and you don't want to be lonely, you got to start reaching out and start doing some things that will get you up out of that state. Another thing you want to do is recognize various patterns that are going on with you. One of the things is helping you to observe your daily routines and maybe social interactions that you have. Y'all, when I go through a day and realize that I have not touched individuals, there's going to be a deficit somewhere. Hey, Mrs. Cheryl, there is going to be a deficit somewhere, and I'm going to find myself needing to connect somewhere. This is where you will you sometimes when you if you have patterns of disconnection for whatever reason, you may do things like you avoid social invitations. Like the lady, she sent me the invitation the other day. I saw it, but I didn't necessarily say anything right away. I thought about it. Okay, do you want to be in isolation, or do you want to get out and start mingling with people? And so I decided, let me pick up the invitation. I've had a couple of people reaching out to me with invitations. Okay, let me see which one I'm going to fulfill. Y'all, God got a sense of humor. And when I tell he hears our prayers, I think it was about a month ago. When I tell you God is so strategic with what he does, one of my old church members from back home, one of the gentlemen at the church reached out to me to tell me he was getting ready to get married, and he wanted to invite me to the wedding. And I was just I was honored for one that they thought about me and the different things like that. And so I finally got the invitation the other day, or reminded the other day, and the wedding is Sunday. And I'm like, oh my God, Marilyn, I knew it was in May, but I couldn't remember what date it was. But I was going to go regardless. So I started thinking, oh, say, let me get all my stuff together. I went and got my hair done so that I could be ready for it. Went and found a nice outfit. I haven't bought anything. I haven't gone to places like that in a while. So I had to go and, buy me an outfit. And then, y'all, I remembered, oh my God, my whole church family is going to be there, because that's just how tight we were at the church. And I said, oh, this fixing to be a big old family reunion. I think what it'll do also is help to remind you of some of the isolation or the loneliness that may have taken place is because you disconnected from something that was very important to you. My church was very important to me. And when I moved to Dallas, it was like I didn't reconnect quickly. One, because I had ultimate connections, and I'm working with that, and I'm not really thinking about the importance of making sure you get your church family connected, because that was very important to you. Even though we've stayed connected with each other here and there, it ain't nothing like it was when we were actually at the church. And y'all, all of a sudden, I felt this sense of fulfillment taking place within me because I started saying, I'm getting ready to get back around my church family. Even though I'm starting with a new church family here, that made me really, really feel God is working. I think when you make intentional moves to do certain things, I'm not trying to fill it up with no man. I'm not trying to, I know that, y'all know my thing. I said this year, God, I'm believing for it this year. And I just put it in the atmosphere. God, I don't know how you're going to do what you're going to do, but I'm putting it out there. And so what I'm doing, I'm not putting all my time and attention into that. I want to make room for it, but I want to make room for other things that, may bring, a sense of peace to me, having a healthy relationship in my friendships, not feeling like I'm isolated and not getting out the house. I want to start doing so. I'm doing these things intentional, y'all. So I'm recognizing patterns in myself. When somebody invites you, do you go? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to go to everything, but I'm going to go to some things. So you want to start, kind of thinking about that. Another thing, if you engage with others but still feel unfulfilled, loneliness may be the issue. You may be connecting with the wrong people, or sometimes there may be something, an inner struggle that's going on inside of you that may be too deep for you to share with other people right now. But I promise you, if you keep showing up, you're going to make a connection somewhere. You got to want it bad enough when you've got that thing of feeling unfulfilled and you know that you're complete in Christ. But right now, there's an emptiness that's there. It may be just a lonely. You got to keep showing up, even when you feel that way, because eventually, I promise you, if you keep believing God for what it is you need and don't turn all of your attention to a relationship, see, because you want to be healthy when the relationship comes in, and you do not want to miss red flags that may be there either. Because sometimes when you start putting yourself into just that relationship and that relationship alone, you're gonna miss a whole lot of flags because you're putting all your eggs in one basket over there. Have yourself a sense of fulfillment, with some other things. So another thing, if there's free time, and if your free time is spent in personal growth and reflection, it might be just solitude. That's a good thing. You're growing in that. That's not isolation at all. You are doing personal growth and development. That's what I call everybody that's in my programs. Everybody may be going through some shifts. Everybody may be going through some changes. And then you got people around, you got church family, you got family. But because there is an awakening that's taking place within you and called personal development, you're going through those bouts to where, do I fit here like I used to? Or is there something else that I'm longing for? There is nothing wrong with that. This is where you're just in solitude and not isolation. And I think it's good to know the difference. Another thing you may want to do is explore your cause for what you do, and there could be a reason for a lot of things. You don't want to always think something bad is going on, because if you've had a life transition like a breakup, and breakups can be hard, y'all, moving, a career change, you may be, moving from, just a basic worker to a manager. Those are life transitions. And it takes a minute to explore things because it could lead to isolation because, maybe you're feeling sorry for yourself or you're not feeling good. I don't feel, I had to uproot my kids from where we used to live, and now I don't have any friends over here. You got to settle in with yourself and know that this is just a life transition that's taking place, and it will get better. Even the breakups, they will get better. I love what Jessica is doing with the affirmations, because y'all, she healing herself from the inside out with those affirmations. And if you can tell, she's getting stronger and stronger every day, and she's helping us to become stronger and stronger. When she first came into the room, she would do her affirmation for about 10 minutes, and then she would be out of there. And then next week she'd come in, she may have done it 15 minutes. And then I noticed this week she going the whole 21 minutes, because our thing is 21 minutes. She's feeling a sense of belonging. She's feeling like she's found worth. even after life transitions has taken place. Because sometimes that stuff can be so hard to have a breakup, especially if y'all were very, very connected with one another. That can be very detrimental to you, moving, going to another place. It could be a lot, And then also, if there's some external pressures, or comparisons where there's a cause for what's going on. Maybe you're lonely because you set some bad, you know, karma out there, and somebody walked away from you. Sometimes families do this toward one another. Sometimes we set out bad karma, and we're going through that place of isolation, and it doesn't feel it's a feeling of loneliness. It doesn't feel good, you know. And you have to, stop and pull it together. Pull your thoughts together. Just start exploring the cause. What is the cause behind this? Is there anything that I would like to do different? It could be a whole lot of things that you could do. There are things that you can do to take action for all of these things that you can do to combat loneliness. One, first of all, make a determination that I don't want to be alone. I don't want to grow old alone. I want to do some things that are different. One of the things you want to start doing is start building deeper relationships. And to me, that always starts with God, being okay with that. It's good to go through isolation in the wintertime because you can't go too many places anyway, So just stopping to find out who you are. Y'all, when I went through that last year, when I went through the last year and the year before, when I started Ubering, and because I wasn't on a permanent job or anything, y'all, I had to find a new world out there. I had to find, a new kind of sense of belonging. Some of the Uber drivers, we became acquainted with each other. It was just a lot of different. I knew that was not my set place, but I'm gonna make it do what it do right now, and I'm gonna build some deeper relationships with this and get to know myself. One of the things I did not like about it, riding makes you think a whole lot. And some of the thoughts that kept coming up, I was like, oh my God, I can do without that, And I literally had to tell myself, not today. We're not thinking about all that today. We out here for a purpose, for things that we're doing. And Lord, help me to learn the lesson behind that. Because it's always a lesson behind whatever message. Help me to learn the lesson behind whatever this is. And I went through that and I think all of it was intentional. I don't think for 1 minute that God skipped a beat on the time that I left the job and the time he reconnected me to a job. One of the things that I learned on there is what I like and what I don't want like on jobs. I go for purpose. I don't go for anything else. If there are any shenanigans, stuff that people are doing that to me should not be in the workplace, I don't fit well with that. I'm not good at faking. I'm not good at going along to get along. I come in to do a job. I come in to, yield my skill set over, and I want peace. I want peace in the environment. And anytime I feel like my peace has been disrupted or whatever, that is not going to be a good fit for me. And y'all, I felt myself going through isolated stages there, and during that time before I made a decision, and I didn't like it. Sometimes that thing hits you in the pit of your belly. And sometimes you go in the office and you want to cry because there's something going on. You just can't put your finger on what it is. And I kept thinking, I said, no, God, you didn't groom me for this. You didn't raise me up to be a doormat or, anything like that. And I had to make some tough decisions. I knew the possibility of starting back over again. I had just come out of retirement and I decided to go back to work. And it was like, oh my God. But y'all, I tell you, I learned so much about myself. Don't settle for crumbs or anything. I knew my worth before I left. And I'm like, I'm not settling for just anything. I already knew that culture was is something that I enjoyed on jobs. And I need you to have strong culture in your place. I need there to be a level of professionalism to where that uh, we don't do tit for tat and different things like that. We don't do that tattling thing and stuff like that. That if I ever went through that, that may have been in my 20s, early 30s, but I've not been in environments like so. I had to step back, and one of the things that I chose to do is to forget the things that were behind, because my purpose is bigger than that. And I started choosing to forget what was behind me and to position myself for what God has. I said, God, because it must be good. It must be good. And finally I went in and I said, Lord, I'm ready to sit back and see what the enemy has been after. And what I realized was I love serving executive leaders, but I like serving executive leaders that know what they're doing too. Not just smart, but know what they're doing, that have a level of emotional intelligence on them to know what to do, when to do it, when not to do it, different things like that. And I kept going before God on behalf of, because I don't want to feel that again. I don't want to go through that stage again. I chose not to pursue dating at that time because one, it was a distraction. It was a big major distraction because I didn't have time to be stopping and I have to make money and I got to stop and have a conversation trying to get to know no, I chose not to do that. And then when I came out of it, I was a little bit ready, but I wasn't completely ready. I wasn't ready for no nonsense. I'll put it like that, because if you don't know who you are, people will try to pull anything on you, and that was something that I was not going to do. I was busy trying to get things settled as far as, being on the job and, being able to, have the experiences I need to have, put the time into the job. I didn't want anything disrupting, amen. I didn't want anything disrupting my peace when it came down to getting my home settled. And so I put like the dating thing on the back burner so that it could match up at the right time. I ended up meeting some people. I mean, well, especially one gentleman really, really enjoyed it. But I think I'm so focused on you need to be ready. I didn't go through everything that I went through so that I could wait on somebody trying to get ready. I need you to be ready so that we could be moving in the same direction, with each other. So when it comes down to the single life out there, and guys are wanting mates or what, I would say do your due diligence with getting you together first so that you know what you like. If you're dealing with single seasons of loneliness, are you lonely for a mate, or are you just lonely for people to be in your life? Because if you have not done the work for a mate to be in your life, it's probably not a mate that you're looking for. It's probably companionship, people to be around, because relationships take a lot out of you. And if you have not built yourself up emotionally, what they say, you got to have some emotional readiness. You probably not ready for no relationship. When you don't know when to cut the yes and the no off or whatever, or you still kind of giving in to things, different things like that, you're probably still not ready for it. That's why we bump into a whole lot of things out there. But knowing, all right, this season I'm in, it looked like I'm lonely, but I'm not lonely for just anything. I want somebody in my life, but I got to ask myself the right questions too. Am I prepared? Am I ready for that? I don't want to choose anybody because I'm lonely. I want somebody to be in my life. I'm going to change loneliness to solitude. I'm choosing to be alone. I'm choosing to be alone. I'm not lonely. I'm choosing to be alone by myself so that I can get me together, And if it's isolation, you separating for whatever reason that you're not separating because you're scared to get back out there or, think somebody's going to do something wrong. If you're thinking like that, you're still not ready. If you keep thinking somebody's always going to try to get over on you or do you in or whatever, you're not ready. You should not go out into the dating world like that if you're not prepared for it. Y'all, I wasted a whole year and a half on a gentleman that I thought he was ready to move forward, and to realize that he was still healing emotionally from some things. Sometimes people want to start dating because they do feel lonely, and then they'll hook up with somebody and then they'll realize that I really was not as ready as I wanted to be for that. That's a waste of time. You can have people wasting your time with that. Now, what I would say with a situation like that is eat the fish and spit the bones out. Find the good part in it, take your portion, the things that you learned from it, and then grow from it from there. One of the things that I have, taken from situations, like when you've already had somebody that's been good to you, you don't settle for anything less than that. People can come in and try to, say this or that, but when you've already experienced good, sometimes our timing may not have been right, but I've already experienced good. I'm not going out there for something less than that. And you got to stay true to your value, even when you're getting older, ladies. You feel like your biological clock is ticking, or you feel like I'm getting a little bit past my age or whatever. No, no, no. It's all about you getting yourself together and getting prepared for what it is that you want. There are certain things you still dealing with insecurities, and I'm not saying you're gonna be completely secure within yourself, because somebody could come in and really help you to work through that. But if you still you really thinking that everybody doing something that they really not doing, you're not ready. You're not ready. When you're not ready to share, when you don't want to share in the relationship, it's got to be your way because you're afraid, you're not ready. you know and you got to be willing to, let me tell you, it would do you well for you to meet somebody. If you're in that stage like that and you really want a relationship, it would do you well that God will send you somebody in your life that will pull your coattail on that, to let you know, hey, I'm interested in you, but that thing right there you got going on, that's not gonna do well in this relationship. Y'all, I remember that was Jada Pickett and what was her husband name, Will Smith, when they came together, and Jada was doing something, and Will pulled her over to the side and told her that's not going to work in this relationship. That thing you're doing, whatever that is, that's not going to work over here. And sometimes you got to keep telling them, because people are used to doing whatever they're doing. Now, if it becomes to the point to where you keep saying things over and over again, that person you may have to check out from that, because they're going to probably try to take you backwards more than forward. Because if we're not going to work together to move forward, we want to be with somebody, but I don't want to hear all that yapping that's going on about everything happening in your past. That's another thing I want to say to you guys. When you get in relationships and people are always talking about their past all the time, what some woman did to them, what some man did to them, and I mean, it's like a record that they're playing. You may listen to it for a little while, but after a while, you got to think better of yourself. Because 9 times out of 10, if they talk about them a lot, they're not talking about y'all. That's one of them things where they say, "Well, we'll see," because they're not through talking about where they've been. They're not through doing it. The gentleman that I mentioned, there were telltale signs with him as well. Year and a half of dating him, and he kept visiting an old area that he and his ex-wife used to live in. And I kept thinking, and at the time, I got a big heart of compassion for people. So I know that when people are trying to heal, sometimes it takes them a little while to go through that. But that particular thing was taking a while. And I kept thinking, I wonder if they're still holding on to maybe something will change, you know? And then when you get into a good relationship, do you know a good relationship will heal you? And it'll make you go back and start thinking, well, maybe I didn't do everything I need to do. That's why you don't want to spend your time. And my girlfriend used to say something, as she said, you fattening frogs for snakes. You fattening frogs for snakes. You want to be healthy enough within yourself to declare that the other person be healthy as well. That's not being mean. That's protecting your investment, your time. Because that's a thing that can lead you into isolation later on. I don't want to be with nobody. Yeah, I just want to be by myself. Because you trying to figure this thing out, somebody it'll embarrass you, especially if y'all have made it to the altar and then that person changed their mind, they embarrassed you, and you thought that you both of y'all are going in the same direction, or you mess around and got married. You married somebody ahead of season, and before things were put together in their lives, and then all of a sudden you ran into a bumpy situation, that thing can lead you into isolation and depression too, especially if you are big on image and you worried about how something's going to mess with your image. There are I want to kind of hit these couple of scriptures before we leave tonight, for those of you that maybe just thinking, some of these things Ms. Marilyn's talking about tonight, I can see myself in that, and I want to go back in and examine to make sure that I'm not falling in the negative part of loneliness or isolation. I want to be able to do with some things. There is a scripture, if you are dealing with loneliness, in Psalms 34:18, and he said, "The Lord is close to the broken heart, and he saves those who are crushed in spirit." This is a reminder that God is near in moments of deep loneliness and sorrow. When you're hurting, you're going through pain, all of that. If you're going through a breakup, you're going through, maybe lost a great friendship, relationship, marriage, whatever. Just know that God is close to those that are brokenhearted, and he saves those who are crushed in spirit. He gives you a reason to live again. Can't nobody do that but God. Because sometimes you're sitting in the middle of not wanting to face the things that have happened, and you never decide to come up out of. You gotta be able to rest in God and know that he is close to those that are brokenhearted. Another one is Isaiah 43:2. He says, "When you pass through the waters, I'll be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not swallow you up." This assures us that we are never truly alone, even when it comes down to difficult times in life, difficult seasons. If you're in the water, I always remember he said, "If you make your bed in hell, that's where I'll be too." Wherever you are. Can you imagine a person that's imprisoned, and maybe they have been put in isolation? It's good to know the scriptures if you get yourself in something like that, because the enemy of the noise in your head can get so loud to where you're screaming out, "Why did I do that? I'm a failure." All these kind of things, and the enemy calling you sure are. When you get in those times of isolation, this is where you gotta. When you pass through the waters, I'll be there with you. When you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep you over. Can you imagine getting that locked up in your heart when you're in a difficult time, and the Lord shows up and he gives you comfort, and he gives you light on the other side of that? That's a real thing, y'all. And you wonder how some people made it through. They took the word of God with them 9 times out of 10, or they found hope in something. Another one you find comfort in loneliness is Psalm 68:6. It says, "God sets the lonely in families. He leads out the prisoners with singing, but the rebellion live in a sun-scorched land." God sets the lonely in families. That's what he gives you family for. You have no reason to be lonely. Y'all may have to learn how to get along with each other, but it's not necessarily a place where you should be lonely. He leads out the prisoners with singing. They have hope within. That's what that represents. We have a hope. We got a song in our heart. Remember when he said, even with the children of Israel, when they had gone into Babylon, the first thing they said, we're singing a foreign song in a foreign land. They don't know anything about this that's going on over there. And there could be two ships crossing in the night, to where it's like I'm going in, and that this song that I'm getting in my heart, what is that song? What do I need that for? And I realized, yeah, you're gonna need that to anchor you in with what you're going through. Isaiah 41:10 says, "Do not fear, for I am with you, and do not be dismayed, for I am your God." Those affirmations, the things that Jessica's doing on her call right now, that's all she's doing is affirmations. It's coming in to remind you of the promise of God. It's yes and it is amen. You want fresh starts in your life? You want to start with God. I thought about, I was meeting with Maria yesterday as coming in for a health coach, and it was a good meeting, and I thought about it today. I did very good. I was very cautious of the things that I ate, the things that I did, because I know I had to report to her for one. I said that's a good reason. And then the Lord reminded me, why don't you put some scriptures on that? If you're eating out of loneliness, Are you eating out of whatever? Why don't you put some scriptures in that? So when the enemy tries to come up and bring something in you, and then you feel the emotional, that's that feeling lonely. You feel the emotional thing to go eat. I want you to put this scripture along with it. God, He's near to those that have a broken heart, whatever the case may be. He knows what's going on with you at all times. So don't put that, if you know that's not a healthy choice for you, don't put that in your mouth. Put that word of God in your mouth. You'll be amazed at how God will work things there. If you are dealing with things like, like overcoming isolation, 2 Timothy 4:10 says, but the Lord stood at my side and gave me strength. I feel like I'm alone, this physical place, I feel like I'm alone in. And the Lord stood by my side and He gave me strength. I went to court by myself, or I had to raise those children by myself. You can feel isolated because you're raising kids by yourself. You could be in a marriage and feel like you're doing everything by yourself. But the Lord stood by my side and gave me strength to do what I need to do. This represents God's unwavering presence, even in times of isolation. When you think that you're all by yourself and having to do it by yourself, God is always there with you. And you have to remind yourself of that constant, because if you don't, and you go to bed at nighttime, they ever start whispering in your. That's why we have so many classes going on during the week, because we're trying to combat the enemy from speaking things into your life that's not true. You may be going through a temporary situation right now, and we're trying to drown out the voice of the enemy. I come in Monday through Friday with morning motivation. We come in on the Tuesday night with the tender at heart. I come in with the relational real talk, and Mrs. Joe comes in with the men's locker room, so we can drown out the noise so that you can make it safely to the other side. See, there are often times where you need, you know how sometimes you need a spotter when you're trying to do something, you're trying to lift some weights, some heavy weights, and it may be just a little bit too much for you. You put a spotter behind you that, just in case if that thing starts falling on you, the spotter comes in to help you to lift it back up again. That's what we come in to do with Ultimate Connections. We come in to run the devil up out this place. While we're waiting on God to do what needs to be done, remember 3 John when He said, beloved, I wish above all things that you would prosper and you could be in good health, even as your soul prospers. While I'm waiting on soul prosperity, that's my will, my emotions, my intellect. I'm waiting on the right thing to come in. Guess what? We're going to run the devil up out of there, because I know that God's going to come in and do what He wants to do. When you finally get to a place of resting and realize there's got to be a better way, God's going to provide another way to go about doing this. Another one in Romans 8:39 and 39 says, neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future will be able to separate me from the love of God. I feel isolated right now. I feel like I'm alone. I feel like, that I got the short end of the stick. But no, neither death nor life, nor angels nor demons, nor present nor future will be able to separate me from the love of God. This is a power declaration that nothing can isolate us from God's love when you know that He is really there for you. It may not feel like it, but you got to know it. You don't go by what you feel, you go by what you believe. I believe that my God, He's a present help. He's everything that I need. That's why a lot of time when I get in the morning time and I'm making declarations, I'm literally warding the enemy out. The word of God says this, so that's what I believe. I don't know what you're talking about, but this is what I believe. And do you know what this, speaking to the singles out there, do you know when you find that kind of peace, that mate you've been looking for, they coming after you? Because what you did was you put a pin in the only way that you knew how to go after or pursue your dreams, and you decided to put God first. All right, I'm gonna pursue the things of God. That's why I keep telling people, they keep talking about this countenance that's up on my face. I said, I promise you, it's the countenance of God. Because I remember when the Lord said to get things in order. Y'all, I went back in, I had to get things in order with my career, my church, different things like that. When you start getting those things in order and you feel good about you, do you know you're going to attract somebody? And they will come from nowhere. You don't even know where they end up coming from. And it will leave you in amazement, wondering How in the world did the Lord bless me like that? Y'all, I'm going through that with my job. I'm going through that with my church. I'm going through that with new friendships in my life. How in the world did the Lord bless me like that? Because you put the kingdom first. And then everything else that you needed was added. Y'all, I started delegating things off of my plate, to give to other people, because you got to make room for what it is that you're believing God for. And then believe God to bring the right people in to do what needs to be done. Because anytime you got to keep starting over and you have to keep, hitting that thing over and over again, you're going to feel like you're defeated. And sometimes when you feel defeated, that old feeling of isolation and loneliness starts kicking back in again. And you never reach your goals because you're still dealing with the emotional part of a lot of stuff. We got to get to the place where we become what we call steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain. I want to say this to y'all, and I'm gonna get ready to close on this. When you are at that place to where you're breaking out of an old system of anything, you're coming into all these classes, it takes a minute to catch up to where you're trying to go. Because you got to remember, you've been so connected to your past, and sometimes you don't know what's of God and what's not. That's why it's important to come into rooms like this and you speak it up out of your mouth. And when you open up your mouth and you start declaring that, that's the great thing about getting involved. Lord, I want my voice to be used. See, because when I speak it out of my mouth, do you know that I back the enemy up off of me? When he comes in and wants to, you know how it is, disrupt your peace about a conversation or something like that, something you believe in God for, you come into space like that. Do you know the Lord is warding that enemy up off of you? Because when you by yourself, anything can come in. Just know that when you're making that transition, the devil, he's still on your heel, but you got to keep doing it. You got to stay ahead of him, stay ahead of the game. Because if you stop in your track and you start going over there and dealing with loneliness, you still dealing with isolation over there, he's going to get back on your heels again. And he comes in stronger the next time than he did the first time. And so making sure, I got to keep moving. I got to keep showing up. I got to keep coming to this class. Y'all, I can see some of y'all out there that y'all come to a lot of the stuff. I see, yeah, they running away from something. Not necessarily people. They're running away from an old system of doing things, and they're trying to clutch on until they catch hold to this thing with God. I would say keep doing it until you are unmovable, until the enemy can't get a grip on you with that anymore. And the great thing is make sure you stay connected to the things of God. You stay connected to the purpose of God. And I promise you that everything that you have desired in life, it is going to start chasing you down everywhere. Your money is going to chase you down. Don't go chase money. Let money chase you. Jobs, they will start. Y'all, I still get a whole lot of, people reaching out. I don't even entertain that stuff. I got what I needed to take me through retirement. I'm done with that. And then I'm letting the Lord go on and set me up for the other side so that when I make that crossover, that I don't have to worry about trying to, be on no job until I'm 70 years old. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to live, a good life. 65 or maybe 67 may be enough, but I'm not trying to stay on no job till I'm 70 years old. I want to be able to live life. Amen. Well, I hope and pray that this has blessed you guys today, and that it did not bore you or anything, because y'all get so quiet out there. I hope it was more information and y'all just taking in the information, but just to think about, what, I got to get myself in position for what it is that I'm believing God for. And if you're going through stages of isolation, change that word to solitude. I'm making a choice that I be by myself on purpose so that God can fill me up with the things that I need to do. If you're dealing with isolation or whatever the case may be, that's just you choose to be alone. Make sure you start getting out and mingling with other people out there. Make it, do it on purpose. And people start sending you invitations, start getting out and going and just mingling with other people. You never know where God's got your blessing at. You never know where you're going to end up meeting a mate at. You never know when that job situation is you just never know. But you won't find it if you don't get up out that state of isolation. Get into where you start mingling with other people. If you're choicy about it, that's okay. Be choicy. Make sure you make sure you good in your spirit, because you're going to attract exactly what you are. So whatever it is you're looking for, make sure you are that as well, and then let God do the rest of it. Amen. Well, I hope and pray that this has blessed y'all tonight, and I look forward to you guys coming back in with us again throughout the week. Be sure to share with others about what it is that we are doing here, and this room right here. This is going to be the biggest thing, is getting them over to the right room so that they can hear the message. But I will download it onto YouTube so that others can go back in there and check it out. And I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. And then, where are you at now? Are Singles Let's Talk? Are you in a place where you are getting beyond that lonely stage or that isolated stage? And what are you doing during that time? Are you really ready for God to do some amazing things with you as well? Amen. Well, y'all, that's it for tonight. I hope that everybody has a wonderful, wonderful night of just peace and rest. I hope this has been one of those things to where the Lord has really, gotten you into like an incubated state to where, God, we working on some stuff. And every time them doors open up, I'm going to show up over there, because I got some things that I want to see in you. And the only way that it's going to be done is that I sit down at your feet and learn of you. Amen. Well, that's it for tonight. I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful night. And we look forward to coming back in tomorrow with morning motivation for the benediction, so that we can close out for the week. And y'all, we will be taking a break next week from all of the ministry so that we can do some resets and that we can do some regrouping. And if this is one of the areas that sense that I need to regroup on, be ready to go into fasting and prayer about it. I promise you, it don't take God long to do nothing. You just need to have a made up mind. And when your mind is made up and your direction is clear, you got your purpose before you, God can do anything, and it don't take him long to do it. Amen. Well, y'all be blessed. Have a wonderful night. And I'll see you guys back again on the next one. In Jesus' name.